Administration officials tell CBS News President Trump signed a proclamation to ban travel from certain countries, citing national security risks. Trump's proclamation fully restricts and limits the entry of nationals from 12 countries.
President Trump is preparing to ban visas from 36 countries, including Nigeria, Egypt, Ghana, and even U.S. allies like Djibouti. The reason? Security concerns, they say. But the list tells a different story. Why are most of the targeted nations poor, black, or powerless? Why now? And what's the real agenda behind this sweeping move? Let's find out. This isn't just a policy change, it's a declaration. When Donald Trump's administration listed 36 countries for potential visa bans, 25 of them African, it wasn't some routine security update. It was a quiet, calculated message to an entire continent. You are not welcome. Beneath the legal jargon and the language of national security lies a deeper truth. This is not about biometric passports or background checks. It's about who controls movement and who is allowed to participate in the future. They say the issue is overstay rates, document fraud, and poor digital systems. But ask yourself, if that were the case, where are India, Russia, or the Philippines on that list? These countries also have visa overstays and infrastructure problems, yet they're not being banned. Why? Because they have power. They have leverage. They can't be ignored or punished without consequences. Africa, on the other hand, is easy to target, rich in people and resources, but weak in global influence. That's what this is really about. The ban isn't aimed at criminals. It's not about insurgents. It's about stopping everyday Africans, students, professionals, families, artists, innovators from crossing borders. Because in the eyes of the West, African movement equals African progress. And African progress is a threat to the old world order. For decades, the system has been built on the assumption that Africa will always stay behind, sending raw materials, receiving aid, supplying labor, but never rising on its terms. That assumption is now under pressure. Across the continent, tech hubs are booming. Youth populations are exploding. In Lagos, Nairobi, Accra, and Dakar, young people are creating, building, and organizing. They're launching startups, reshaping politics, and redefining what African excellence looks like. And as that potential grows, so does the panic in Western capitals. Because for the first time in history, Africa doesn't need the West to survive. It only needs the space to move freely, to breathe, to exchange ideas, to expand. And that is what this ban is trying to block. The memo from Washington isn't just a visa restriction. It's a form of psychological warfare. It tells Africans, your documents are not trusted, your systems are not sufficient, and your people are not safe to let in. It tells a young Burkina-based student who just earned a scholarship in Boston that her dreams are conditional. It tells an Ethiopian doctor trying to attend a global health summit that his expertise doesn't matter. It tells an Ivorian entrepreneur that his innovation has no place in Silicon Valley. In short, it tells Africa, stay where you are. But perhaps the most dangerous part isn't even the policy itself. It's the way it shapes how we see ourselves. After enough rejections, delays, and denials, people stop trying. They start shrinking their dreams to fit the limits imposed on them. That's what this policy is really designed to do. Not just block access, but shrink vision. And it's working. Quietly, slowly, invisibly, it is discouraging the next generation of African leaders from even daring to move. And yet, beneath the silence, something is changing. Across social media, in classrooms, in diplomatic halls, a different conversation is emerging. Africans are no longer simply reacting to these bans, they're beginning to question the entire system behind them. Why do we need access to spaces that reject us? Why do we continue to seek validation from systems built to exclude us? And what would happen if we stopped begging for entry and started building our global platforms? The visa ban is not the end of our movement, but it is a wake-up call, one that forces us to ask, if the world is trying to lock us out, what are they afraid we'll build if we finally move freely? Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. The leaked memo does more than restrict people. It draws a political atlas in which value, threat, and trust are assigned by longitude. Lay the 36 banned nations over a global map, and you see a blazing band that wraps around the equator, almost as if the White House took a highlighter to the world's poorest latitudes and said, "Here is where risk lives." Contrast that with the blank spaces in the North Atlantic, and you discover the blacklist's first unspoken rule. The closer a country sits to wealth and whiteness, the less likely it is to be deemed unworthy of entry. Look at West Africa. Nations like Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Côte d'Ivoire teem with iron ore, bauxite, cocoa, and gold. Commodities pouring steadily into Western supply chains. Yet while their minerals have unfettered passage, their citizens are contained behind layers of biometric demands. Move east and you find the Horn, a crossroads where the Indian Ocean, Red Sea, and Gulf of Aden converge. Whoever controls mobility there shapes global trade routes. No coincidence that Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Djibouti appear together, boxed in by a ban that immobilizes labor even as it leaves shipping lanes untouched. Then come the island micro-states, Tuvalu, Tonga, Vanuatu in the Pacific, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia in the Caribbean. These nations barely register on Washington's overstays tracker, yet they occupy prized votes at the United Nations and within the Commonwealth. They are small enough to silence without diplomatic blowback, but collectively large enough to tilt multilateral negotiations. By branding them non-compliant, the U.S. places pressure on their leaders to align foreign policy with American interests or risk permanent exile from the world's most coveted market. Even more revealing are the omissions. Countries with notorious black market passport industries, Malta, Cyprus, the United Arab Emirates, escape mention. Their wealthy golden visa clients pay for legitimacy and glide through customs while university scholars from Ghana or Sudan are left to prove their innocence twice over. In this cartography, power is not just political, it is numeric, denominated in convertible currencies and expressed through lobbying budgets. Where money flows, bans evaporate. But the list isn't solely about economics, it's a cultural index too. When Nigeria's Afrobeat stars headline global festivals, they break more than music charts. They crack the myth of African marginality. Shutting down their touring visas curbs a narrative of black excellence, traveling unfiltered into metropolitan centers. The same applies to Nollywood directors, Yoruba language coders, and Oromo-speaking AI researchers. Each carries a story that complicates Western stereotypes of a helpless continent. By stalling their movement, the blacklist preserves an older, simpler picture, one in which Africa remains static, needy, and outside the modern conversation. History shadows these red lines. Colonial powers once stamped native passes to restrict movement between plantations and cities. Apartheid turned internal migration into a crime of complexion. Jim Crow enforced racial border controls within a single nation. Today's blacklist inherits that lineage but hides it behind firewalls and facial recognition. It is racism rendered as software, polite, data-driven, invisible until your passport triggers a secondary screening and your future evaporates. Yet maps can be read in reverse. If Washington is anxious about young Africans leaving, what might the continent build by choosing to stay? Each redlined country becomes a node in an involuntary network, a forced commonality that could be repurposed into solidarity. Nigerian universities already partner with Kenyan incubators. Ghanaian filmmakers now premiere in Kigali. Senegalese fintech companies are raising capital in Johannesburg. The more the blacklist shrinks external routes, the more internal corridors appear, weaving a patchwork of south-to-south exchange that the memo's authors never anticipated. And this is the quiet paradox. By trying to immobilize Africa, the ban inadvertently maps out the precise coalition capable of rewriting global mobility rules. The nations marked dangerous are now unmistakably visible to one another. They share an experience of exclusion that can galvanize collective bargaining, whether that means launching a continental student visa scheme, harmonizing digital currencies, or simply refusing to accept a world that quantifies human worth by the color of a passport. The blacklist is a projection of fear, but it can also serve as a blueprint for resistance. It shows where the West's anxieties concentrate, and where Africa's leverage might yet emerge. For all the talk of geopolitics and government systems, the true weight of this travel ban won't be felt in policy briefings or embassy cables. It will be felt in the quiet heartbreak of missed opportunities, in the inboxes that stay empty after scholarship results, in the visa applications marked rejected, in the plane tickets were never booked, the internships were never started, and the conferences were never attended. Because beyond the headlines and the state memos, this isn't a diplomatic decision. It's a personal blockade against Africa's most ambitious, mobile, and talented citizens. Imagine a student in Accra who spent 3 years working toward admission into MIT. She's accepted, top of her class, with glowing letters of recommendation. But because her passport comes from a country now deemed non-compliant, she's barred from entry. No visa, no appeal, just silence. Imagine the anger. Imagine the loss. Not just for her, but for the world of ideas she would have entered, the knowledge she would have carried home, the generation she would have inspired. Or take the young Kenyan doctor invited to a cutting-edge medical research exchange in Boston. His work focuses on rural diagnostics, with results that could save lives across sub-Saharan Africa. He's fully funded, he's trained, he's ready. But the embassy delays his visa for security clearance, then quietly cancels the interview altogether. Meanwhile, an American pharmaceutical company patents the very diagnostic method he pioneered and sells it back to African clinics at 10 times the cost. That's not just exclusion, it's extraction. Then there's the Nigerian software engineer who co-founded a fintech startup designed to connect farmers with mobile payment systems. They've just secured funding and are invited to pitch at a global tech accelerator in California. It could open doors to global markets, partnerships, and scale. But while their counterparts from Germany, Brazil, and Singapore breeze through border controls, his application is under review. The pitch goes ahead without him. The product is copied. The credit is lost. These aren't isolated stories. They are becoming the norm for a rising class of Africans whose skills, dreams, and ambitions are being fenced off, not by their lack of ability, but by the suspicion placed on their national origin. The visa ban doesn't say, "You're not qualified." It says, "We don't trust you, even if you are." And that message ripples beyond those directly affected. It tells parents across the continent that their children's futures cannot include the United States. It tells researchers that collaboration has a border. It tells young creators, thinkers, scientists, and entrepreneurs, no matter how hard you work, we still get to say no. But here's where the memo miscalculates. It assumes Africans will accept the ban as fate. It assumes rejection will lead to retreat. What it doesn't account for is adaptation. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Already we are seeing a quiet shift. Students who once aimed for the US are now choosing universities in China, Turkey, Malaysia, and South Africa. Developers are building African-led tech incubators from Nairobi to Kigali. Artists are forming cross-border collectives within the continent. Medical professionals are launching peer-to-peer networks to share research without waiting for Western validation. Africa is not standing still. It's pivoting. Yes, the doors are closing, but not all doors. And in the spaces left behind, something powerful is happening. Africans are beginning to rely less on permission from the West and more on partnerships among themselves. This isn't just survival, it's a restructuring. What the ban intended as punishment may end up being the very thing that accelerates African self-determination. Because when your movement is restricted, you start to build where you are. And when enough people do that, you stop needing the systems that locked you out in the first place. So Trump tried to make it worse. After naming and shaming 36 countries, the Trump administration didn't stop at restrictions. It delivered an ultimatum: comply within 60 days or face a full visa ban. On paper, it looks like a compromise, a window of opportunity, a chance for high-risk countries to improve their documentation systems and prove themselves. But for those who know how international power works, this isn't a lifeline. It's a trap. The requirements outlined in the leaked memo read like a fantasy checklist, crafted not for success, but for failure. These 36 countries, many still rebuilding from war, climate disaster, or debt, are expected to rapidly roll out biometric passport systems, link civil registries to global databases, criminalize document fraud, and create digital tracking infrastructure that even some US states haven't yet implemented. All in 60 days. That's not a policy demand. That's a performance of dominance. Let's look at what's being asked. To satisfy the US, countries must install advanced identity verification systems, iris scans, fingerprinting, facial recognition software, and synchronize those systems with American law enforcement networks. They must digitize every birth, marriage, death, and criminal record in a country where millions still live without internet access or electricity. They must update immigration legislation, train border staff, pass new data laws, and educate the public, all while managing inflation, hunger, or post-conflict recovery. This isn't about safety. This is about setting a bar so high that failure is inevitable. And when failure arrives, as it's designed to, the US can point and say, "See, they couldn't get it together." It allows Washington to maintain the illusion of fairness while enforcing exclusion. It's the same tactic that's been used for decades: set unrealistic terms, wait for collapse, and then blame the victim for not being prepared. And there's another twist. For countries scrambling to meet these demands, the only way out is through the very companies that stand to benefit from their panic. American contractors, data firms, and cybersecurity consultants are already lining up to offer solutions: prepackaged systems, overpriced training programs, surveillance tools. A struggling nation may have to mortgage its sovereignty just to meet Washington's artificial deadline, so the ban becomes a business opportunity, the threat becomes a sales pitch. Welcome to border control as capitalism. Even worse, there's no clarity on what counts as compliance. The memo doesn't define how much progress is enough. A few new scanners? A single new law? Full digital integration? Nobody knows. That ambiguity is not accidental. It gives the US total discretion. Even if a country achieves 95% of the requirements, the White House can say it wasn't substantial. The process becomes a moving target, a game in which the rules can change mid-play, and only one side gets to decide who wins. But here's where the narrative breaks. While Washington issues deadlines, other nations are stepping in. China is offering biometric systems at a fraction of the cost, along with diplomatic support. Russia is promoting surveillance packages bundled with military training. The UAE is funding e-governance tools in exchange for trade deals. These offers come with fewer political strings, and for many African countries, they're starting to look more attractive. The US may think it's pressuring countries into alignment, but it could be pushing them toward new alliances. And the people? They're not sitting idle. Young professionals, especially in tech and policy spaces, are beginning to call out the hypocrisy. On African Twitter, hashtags like the Shot Visapartheid and Caught 60-Day Shame are spreading. Digital activists are creating platforms to track visa discrimination and collect testimonies of blocked futures. Journalists are exposing the double standards, comparing US demands to its domestic failures. The silence is breaking. What Washington doesn't realize is that Africans have played this game before. During colonization, they were told they weren't civilized enough. During the Cold War, they were told they weren't stable enough. Now they're being told they aren't secure enough. But the continent is learning. Compliance doesn't guarantee dignity. Only self-determination does. And as more people wake up to this truth, a deeper question emerges. Not just about borders, but about the future. What kind of global system are we willing to belong to? And what will it cost us to keep trying to fit into someone else's world? If this visa ban has made anything clear, it's this. The door to the West will never truly be open to Africa, not unless it benefits them, not unless they control the terms, and not unless we keep begging to be let in. And perhaps that's the gift hidden in this insult. Because when one door slams shut hard enough, you finally stop knocking. You turn around, you look at what's behind you, and you begin to build from the ground up with your tools, on your terms. Let's be honest. The African dream has, for too long, been exported. Studying in America, working in Europe, networking in London, pitching in San Francisco. It's not because Africa lacks opportunity. It's because those opportunities were always framed as second best. The West told us success means leaving, and we believed it. We built lives around the hope that a visa approval would be all we needed. but that's no longer working. And maybe finally that's a good thing. Because the truth is, Africa isn't weak. It's just unfinished. And what's happening now, this ban, this blacklist, this global slap in the face, it's not a death sentence. It's an awakening. It forces the continent to confront a question we've been putting off for too long. What if we stopped asking for entry and started creating our gates? The talent is already here. Our universities are filled with thinkers who just need research labs and funding. Our cities are home to developers building fintech platforms that rival anything in Silicon Valley. Our artists, musicians, and filmmakers are commanding global attention from Lagos to Kigali to Cape Town. What's missing isn't potential, it's permission, and we don't need that anymore. Let them ban our students. We'll strengthen our universities. Let them deny our doctors. We'll invest in African medical schools. Let them reject our engineers. We'll build tech hubs that don't require Western validation. If they're building walls, we build workshops. If they close their borders, we open our borders to each other. Already we're seeing this shift. Intra-African trade is rising. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is laying the groundwork for a new kind of regional unity, one where goods, people, and ideas can move without a stamp of approval from Washington or Brussels. Young Africans are learning Mandarin, Arabic, and Swahili, not because they're turning their backs on English or French, but because they're preparing for a multipolar future. A future where Africa doesn't wait to be invited to the table. It builds its own. Even culturally, something powerful is shifting. Pan-African festivals, film networks, innovation labs, they're becoming the new gathering places for African excellence, not filtered through foreign embassies, not measured by visa quotas, just us, building with each other. And that's what scares the old systems most. Because when Africans start to rely on each other, the world loses its leverage. When our movement becomes internal, when our trade becomes regional, when our ideas stay home and still thrive, that's when we stop being dependent. That's when we start being unstoppable. The visa ban was meant to isolate us, but it may be the very thing that connects us differently. That forces a deeper conversation about sovereignty, mobility, and what it means to be free in the 21st century. Not free to leave, but free to grow where we stand. So let them keep their closed borders. Let them draw their red lists and shift their goalposts. We've seen enough. We've knocked long enough. We're not waiting anymore. Africa doesn't need their doors. We need our own, and we've already started building them. Do you think Trump will try to do something else? Will he be able to stop Africa from progressing? Let us know in the comments section, why does Trump not give up already? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.